Davis. Today is Tuesday, September the 8th. Hope that you all had a safe and enjoyable, emphasis on safe, Labor Day holiday weekend, like kind of the end of summer, really, as we think about it. But although I, of course, live in Houston and summer is far from over. So I hope you had a safe weekend. And then if you did move around, that you did the things that we always encourage you to do: mask up, practice your social distancing, and make sure that you thoroughly wash and sanitize your hands. Okay, so big show today. Thank you guys for hanging in last week. The show was a little longer, but whenever I have a guest that has so much information, I don't like to cut them short because we don't always get to tap into them. So today's show, we're going to preview a few things. Okay, we're going to talk about the fact that the NFL season officially kicks off this week. And it kicks off with the Houston Texans traveling to Kansas City to take on the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. We're going to talk about that. We're going to preview that game a little bit. We're also going to talk about, I'm going to share with you what you hear from Deshaun Watson, who of course signed his new contract over the weekend. It was a pretty big deal. We're going to let you hear from JJ Watt and Bill O'Brien. So we're going to talk some football. And of course, we're going to talk about what's happening with the NBA. The playoffs are in full swing. And tonight is game 3 in that Rockets series. It's the Rockets taking on the Lakers. That series is tied at 1 game apiece. And we're going to look at that. And the other games, the other playoff games, the other series that are underway. And of course, we will also talk about what's happening in Major League Baseball. Check in with the Astros. They have had their share of injuries this season. The bullpen is not doing great right now, but the team is still forging ahead. So we're going to talk about all of that. And listen, if you are not registered to vote, okay? If you're not registered to vote, you need to do so. Really, it's as simple as that. Because I got to check something. For those of you sometimes who are on, I don't see you yet. But anyway, so it looks like I'm just here alone, but I know that you're with me. But I'm going to remind you to vote. I'm going to remind you to get registered to vote, because you've got to be registered by the end of the month, really by October the 4th, because you've got to be registered, 30 days before the election. And in some states, they've already started to send out ballots. So what I'm saying to you is this election, super important. I think they all are. I think we really know the stakes. The country is at really a crossroads right now, and there's just a lot going on. And so if you like the way things are going, then you'll vote that way. If you don't like the way things are going, you'll vote another way. But the key is that you're counted. So make sure that you're registered to vote. Here's the other thing. Speaking of being counted, I'm going to continue to encourage you to fill out the census form for your family. You can go online. It may take you 10 minutes, but you need to be counted. We all need to be counted. It has to do with resources. It has to do with resources that are allocated to the cities and communities where you live. It has to do with how political lines are drawn in terms of representation. And so it's vital. Like, it's really, really, really important. So I'm just going to encourage you to do that. The time has been shortened. There are people that would like you not to be counted, depending on who you are. And it's not in our best interest. And I know it may be difficult to believe this, but it will not be held against you, that you're counted. So if you have an immigration status that you're concerned about, the census registration will not be held against you. If you have some other kind of status that you're worried about, legal issues, whatever those may be, that would make you think, I don't want to be counted, the census will not harm you in that regard. So my point is simply this: be counted. It's necessary. It benefits everybody, because that's how resources are allocated from the federal government based on population. And where they do that is based on the census, which is only counted every 10 years. So it's in place for a while. Those numbers really matter. So I'm going to encourage you to I'm going to keep doing that while we have time, because they've shortened it by, I think, a month. So knock it out in one day. Register to vote, fill out your census form. All right. Just want to make sure that we're all doing whatever we can and whatever we should be. Okay. So with that, we're going to jump into today's show. Thank you guys, of course, for those numbers. Whoops. Right. Just want to make sure that we're all doing whatever we can. Isn't that weird? Should be. Okay. So with that, we're going to jump into today's show. Thank you guys, of course, for. Okay, I'm sorry. I was so odd. I was trying to wanted to make sure that I shared the video, and so I somehow pulled up myself, and that was not my plan to hear myself. So if you will, let me type it in the. Please share the video, and even if you're watching this as the replay, I would ask you, if you will, share the video. Okay. So it is official. There will be NFL football coming up, right? It all kicks off on Thursday night. The Houston Texans play the season opener in Kansas City against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, I believe, the last numbers I saw are like 9-point favorites. No big surprise there. They are returning, much of what they won the Super Bowl with. They're playing at home. Not that home field advantage gives you much, except that you just get to be at home, because crowds are not really going to be that much of an issue in terms of what home field advantage normally means. But listen, this should be, by all accounts, there's been no preseason games, right? The teams have played. The Texans have had a couple of intra-squad scrimmages, but they haven't had any live action against other teams, which is totally unlike other seasons. And of course, we know that this year is totally unlike any other year, so that's not a big surprise. But it'll be a chance. And so even, me, who normally gets to go out to training camp and watch practice for myself, I do get, the video from the team. They share it with those of us in the credentialed media. We get to see that, but I don't get to go out and see a whole thing for myself. So a lot of it is, I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing how this team looks. I know that, on paper, there's some things about the team that are promising. I think, one of the big things that people talk about when you look at this Houston Texans team is the fact that there's no more D-Hop. DeAndre Hopkins is gone. And there's some who say he was the best player on this team, but they got rid of the best player on their team in the offseason. And so while there is a lot of excitement about Deshaun Watson getting a contract that he deserved, such a good guy, works really hard. And, the kind of leader, the kind of person that you want to see, get the accolades and get the financial benefits and rewards of the work he's putting in. So congratulations to Deshaun Watson, who over the weekend got his contract extension. And, he got a 4-year extension, which means he's locked up here for he'll be in Houston for a while. And there's some key things in that contract, that we know of, from sources. Obviously the money, it was a financial contract, and dollar for dollar, it may be the best contract in the NFL right now. Yes, Patrick Mahomes got a bigger number, but it's for over a longer number of years. This means that, at the end of the contract, I think this contract, Deshaun Watson may be 31 years old. So still have some playing left in him, for an NFL quarterback. And he can determine if he wants to continue to be a Houston Texan or pick up his mat and go someplace else if he, hasn't won a championship yet. So that was smart. He has a no trade clause, so he cannot be traded any place unless he signs off on it, unless he says, okay, yeah, I'll take a trade and I'll take a trade to the team you're trying to trade me to. I think that's really, really key. And he has that in his contract. And he got a lot of guaranteed money. I think it's 111 million of the money that he signed. He signed for as a part of the extension. The number's been about 100 and thought to be about 160 million. The guarantees are 111 million. I don't see why he wouldn't get the entire pot of it. It's a 4-year extension. So congratulations to Deshaun Watson for getting a deal that he is clearly pleased with. And I'm sure you've seen some of the video over the weekend. I'm going to let you, I want to show some today where he was emotional. He was, talked about how grateful he is. His range of emotions that he had. And he talked about that too, just the range of emotions from this year. Like they started the year, losing in the playoffs, being eliminated by Kansas City, the team that they will face, the eventual Super Bowl champions. And then all that happened in the offseason with COVID, and then, losing his number one receiver and DeAndre Hopkins. They had such chemistry and connection. It was just almost poetic watching them as a unit. But D-Hop is gone, and we'll see. They got some speed at receiver, but we'll just see what that looks like. So yeah, good for Deshaun Watson, and I'm going to let you hear from him. So as in keeping with talking about the Texans, I wanted to share this. So now that we're officially in the season, yeah, I think sometimes people forget about my show because they send me things to do. But I wanted to share the injury report. So that comes out now that the season is officially underway. Texans, everybody participated. A few guys had limited participation. Brandon Cooks nursing a quad injury. He's, of course, a new wide receiver. Phillip Gaines, cornerback, the hamstring. Cullen with the hamstring. Jonathan Bernard, outside linebacker, is nursing an injury issue. And Lonnie Johnson, the cornerback, Lonnie Johnson Jr., has a hip challenge. And on the other side, the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 players with limited participation. Travis Kelce, the tight end, he will probably play. He's nursing a little knee injury. And Derek Nady has an ankle injury, a defensive tackle. And then other guys who are a little banged up, but they practice completely. So no need to really go into that. So that was a injury report as of yesterday. Okay, I'm sorry. As of yesterday. So the team will practice today. It's Tuesday. Tomorrow is a travel day. And then the game is Thursday night in Kansas City. So as they say, let's play ball. They've been working to get to this. They've had it seems they've been able to keep the COVID virus under control. They've not had big outbreaks. The Texans have not had, since they've been practicing. Things have been under control. And one of the things that Bill O'Brien said a couple of weeks ago is that he feels good about the protocols they have in place and what the team is doing to keep players safe. And that the concern really is about what happens once the season starts. Like what happens once they get into season? Players are home because once they get into the season, the routine changes. I mean, the schedule changes. And so really for the Texans, that's probably more next week, because when you have a Thursday game, your week is already different, right? It's not quite, the reason is the week is different. So next week, they'll get into their regular routine. Tuesday is the regular off day. I don't think they have any other night games. Most of their games are noon games, except for, I believe they play on Thanksgiving Day. So their schedule would be pretty set, right? And if you're going to play a Thursday game, like OB did, I agree with him here. It's best that it's better that it's the first game of the season, because then you can get into your routine of your schedule instead of having a Sunday game, a quick turnaround for a Thursday game. So at least they're getting this Thursday game played early, and I don't think they have any other Thursday games on the schedule. So with that said, it is NFL's moving forward, and we'll see what happens. Before I let you hear from Deshaun and Bill O'Brien and JJ, and I don't play a lot of JJ on this show, not because I don't like JJ, just because I like to give you things that you don't just get every place else, or that not even that you just, it doesn't have to be something that you don't see somewhere else, but something that has a little, it says something. I like to let you hear from players who have, a little something to say. And so JJ was asked some questions about, when the whole George Floyd murder happened, he was asked his thoughts about it. And so now, of course, as we get ready to go to game 1 to open the season, players and coaches are being asked, what is the NFL going to do? So I'll let you hear from JJ about that, and I'll let you hear from Bill O'Brien. So before we go to football, I've got to talk about the Rockets, right? We are in playoffs. I mean, this is the second round of the playoffs. It's the Western Conference. It's the conference semifinals in the West and then also in the East. And so game 3 is tonight. And with the Rockets taking on the Lakers, the series is tied at a game apiece. And they let one slip away on Sunday. But here's the thing. One of the things that Coach DAntoni said is, we didn't expect to sweep them. I mean, we go out every night to win that game. That's the goal, but, that they were going to be, they're going to sweep the Lakers. So I know people were like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. The Rockets should have won that game. They were in it. I mean, they got down by 20 plus points in the first half. I mean, they didn't come out with really any intensity. You knew the Lakers were going to do that, and I don't know if the word desperation comes up, but it's like, oh, wait, we got to get this thing rolling. So the Lakers came out and they were intense and they made adjustments. And, plus they've been off several days. I tend to think the team that's been sitting at home, as opposed to the team that played a game 7, the team that's played the game 7 and rolls, especially in this situation where they're playing basically every other day since they've been in the bubble anyway. The team that played the game 7 is, if they're in good shape, which this Rockets team is, then they're ready to go. They don't have a drop off. So I wasn't surprised that the series is tied at 1. It would have been great if you're a Rockets fan for the Rockets to have won game 2 and have a 2-0 lead. We also know that after watching the first round when they were up 2-0 over on the OKC Thunder, that doesn't really mean or guarantee really anything, right? So hey, good morning, Charles. Welcome. Glad to always have you here on Chalk Talk. It's good to see you, my friend. Hope that you enjoyed a safe Labor Day holiday, that you had a chance to do something safe and socially distanced, right? So I think the Rockets have looked good. And so I am not a person who believes and talks about moral victories. I think nothing irritates or annoys professional athletes more than saying, well, you lost, but wasn't it a moral victory? No, it was a loss. It was an L. It was an L. But I do think when you watch this team and you're like, man, this team is the best defensive team since they've been in the bubble. It's definitely been playing the best defense in postseason. And so if you follow this Rockets team for any amount of time, I want you to just think about that for a minute. That is something. That this team has come to that place. Charles says that they're surprising him. Yeah, I think they're surprising a lot of people. And watching them is all the time. I'm not really surprised. I just, I've seen the growth with this team. And it's something that I asked James about yesterday, and I asked Mike DAntoni about. I've just seen it. And here's one of the things that I've noticed with this Rockets team. So, they got down big. They came back out, upped their energy. And while, James said that having to overcome that big deficit, that they didn't lack energy late, they made some mistakes. I mean, they did. They had 17 turnovers. This team can't beat the Lakers turning the ball over that much, right? The Lakers scored 27 points off those 17 turnovers. That's not a recipe for success for this Houston Rockets team. He's clear about it. I mean, right, makes perfect sense. But I also think that when you have to expend that much energy to get back in a game, I think it does take a little something out of you down the stretch. And that may lead to some of the turnovers. But I mean, this team is fit, it's in shape. One of the things people talked about when they got into the bubble was, so you saw James Harden, he clearly worked out really hard during the break when they were out for COVID. He had trimmed down more. Not that you would have thought, oh, he's overweight, but you can tell he really kicked up his fitness to another level, which has a lot to do with, how you show up late in games. And here's the other thing. I mean, let's just call it like it is. They're not going anywhere. Like, they're playing basketball. They're around on the campus. They're going home. There's no hanging out all night in the clubs. Whatever you think about it, it's just not happening. So the focus, I think, for everybody is heightened. And not to say that you can't be focused on living your life, but I just think it makes a difference. And so this Rockets team has, when you look at them, I mean, I've covered this team for a long time. And this team likes each other and they believe in each other. You can just see it. There's no, like after the game on Sunday night, Russell didn't have his finest outing. He turned the ball over 7 times. He took about, 6 or 7 threes. He hasn't been doing that since like February or so. I mean, he had gotten aware, because that's not what he does. He's not that he can never hit a 3. He's not that kind of shooter. And so he looked a little, I don't want to say out of control. That's extreme. It wasn't his best game. And he would tell you that, and he'll figure it out. And he's still coming back. I mean, remember, that was his second game. He's just getting back in, not a second game, but he's just getting back from being, injured. So, you work into it, because no matter what you do in rehab and therapy and all that stuff, there's nothing like playing live ball. And so I think that's what we've seen with Russ Westbrook. And he's going to be fine, right? Like Mike D'Antoni says, we're not here without Russell Westbrook. So I'm not worried about him. And we saw him have that kind of game in game 6 against OKC, where between he and James, they had 13 turnovers. James had 6, Russ had 7. Russ came out and was laser focused in game 7. So I'm no doubt that tonight that we'll see that Russell Westbrook. He's just, and like James said after game 2, he does so many things that help you. He does so much that helps you defensively, that helps you off the ball. It's just, he's a vital part of what they do. And so I'm encouraged. I think this Rockets team has a really good shot. I mean, they've got to, they're focused on defense. Like, they talk about their defense. They know that's the key, because their offense is going to be okay. And much of their offense comes from the transition game. So when they're giving up a bunch of transition points, which is what happened in game 2, when they're turning the ball over like they did, 17 turnovers that led to 27 points, and their bench was not as productive as it has been, okay? But I am not overly concerned, because we've seen what Jeff Green has been able to do. He has been productive off the bench. Robert Covington continues to be so. And Daniel House is a guy that has really, I mean, if you remember this Rockets team last year in the playoffs, when Daniel House couldn't even get in the game because whatever the deficiencies were thought to be, now he is an integral part of what this team does, right? And, people each week, it's funny when you talk about the Rockets and small ball, they're a little shorter at some positions, but I don't know anybody who would call PJ Tucker and the way he plays small. I mean, I don't know. He plays big, and he shows up big, and he's scrappy, and it's what makes the Rockets, part of what makes them so good. And Eric Gordon, I think people forget how good. Good morning, Carolyn. Welcome. Thank you, as always, for being here on the show. And good morning, Sylvia, my sister. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you as well for being here for Chalk Talk. Eric Gordon is healthy. Like he was nicked up during the season. And so I think we forget sometimes players that have been out and maybe had some injuries. And so he's playing at a clip, at a level that is, I mean, he's a beast, right? He does, he's such an important part of what this Rockets team does. Everybody knows about the guards, Russ Westbrook and James Harden. But Eric Gordon is vital to this team being successful. PJ Tucker, they can't get there without him. And they can't. And so, and we've seen other players that have stepped up. So it's been surprising for some, for those of us who watch them day in, day out and talk to them day in, day out, not so surprising, but it's good to see them implement it. And listen, the series is far from over. It's tied at 1 game apiece. And the fact that in game 2, the Lakers made a lot of adjustments. You did you even see Dwight Howard? They talked about moving, that Anthony Davis at a different spot on the post, because they have to find a way to offset this Rockets team. So they're doing more trapping, playing more zone. The Rockets kind of had them on their heels. But again, it's far from over. And so I think I was asking, was at my mom's house on Sunday, and I don't know if it was Sunday or yesterday. I was there both days, but my sister said, "What do you think about who could win?" And I said, "I think the Rockets have as good a chance as anybody. This Rockets team has as good a chance as anybody. Although there's a lot of basketball left to play." Charles says, Westbrook brings it. He will be fine. I don't think the Lakers have played well. They may look that way because of the Rockets defense. That's a great point, Charles. I don't think everyone's talked about how the Lakers haven't played that well in the bubble. They haven't shot it as well. But I think the Rockets defense is just really disruptive. What the Rockets have been able to do is disruptive. And so yeah. Okay, whatever. So you're right. That may be part of what their problem is. It may be because of the Rockets defense. The Rockets defense has been really good. It really has. And you're right. Tucker is tough. Gordon has made big. I mean, think about this Rockets team. Eric Gordon, we talk about PJ Tucker. Those are other guys on this team. Robert Covington, they picked up right before the pandemic really kicked in. He has been huge for this Rockets team. Jeff Green has played really well. And when you can get Austin Rivers off the bench to give you some good numbers, it's a good recipe, right? So I'm going to let you hear from James Harden, and let me see if I think it's right here. Nope, that's not it. I took it away. Hold on a second. Let me see here. Okay, they're all there. Show and stream. Hey James, can you talk about just how much this team has grown? I mean, the fact that after each game we're really talking about what you guys do defensively instead of how many threes you shot. How much this team
each year you've been here?
Tremendous amount, and even just this year, even this bubble, we've grown. You know, we had Cub and our new pieces maybe for a few weeks before, and so we really can catch a rhythm on both ends of the ball. Now in this bubble, we had a training camp, we had preseason and regular season games to kind of figure out who our identity is and will be, and we found it. And yesterday it wasn't it. And I think offensively, we can get any shot we want to. We just got to do a better job, especially me and Russell and the ball handlers, of getting those shots and getting those possessions to where we don't give the Lakers, opportunities to get out in transition, because that's what they're really good at. And the more we can make them play, or any team against our half-court defense, we have a chance. And that's what we got to be better at in Game 3 and throughout the rest of the series, and that's what we'll do.
So that was James Harden talking about where they are defensively, as a team, really. And so I think it is, I think it does speak volumes to where they are. I did something different today with some of these streams, and so there we go. Interesting. Okay. And it's everything, and even just the growth I've seen in James. I mean, the maturity I've seen. I remember the day that James Harden signed with the Rockets, and they had the press conference. I was sitting next to his mom, Mona, at the press, and I remember her sitting there. She was telling him, "Sit up straight," "Sit up straight" is what she was mouthing to him. And I kind of looked at her. This was, that was before. It was before Chris Paul. It was before Dwight Howard. I mean, obviously, it was before Russ Westbrook was here. That's when he came from OKC, and he has really stepped into it. That was somebody that we talked about. Something I posted on Twitter during one of the games. I think it was after Game 6, perhaps, when OKC won that game, and Chris Paul made the comment in his post-game remarks talking about, we're made for it. Some guys are made for it. Talking about playing late in the game and showing up, and others are not. Everybody knew or pretty much thought that was somewhat of a shot, a little bit of a dig at at James Harden. And so I posted a question: is James Harden, is he made for it? Is he built for it? And many would say no. But then he comes out in Game 7 and really makes the defensive play that wins the game and seals it, and they advance. So maybe the answer is yes. It's at the very least, possibly. So I believe in giving credit where credit is due. I have been as critical of James Harden as anyone as a player, because I look at, when I talk about players, it really is what I see them doing on the court or where I see them falling short. And so, he has stepped up a bit. And so, good for him. He is clearly leading this team, and what he is able to do with I was like, why is that in my shot? What he is able to do with Russell Westbrook in unison with him as they lead this team and hopefully get to a championship. These two MVPs are both missing something that they both want, and that's an NBA. They want the ring. They want the championship. So Charles says, I've been impressed by their defense. They are playing much better as a team. And Charles, that was the thing when I asked all of them that yesterday. I asked James about that. I asked Mike D'Antoni about how they're playing as a team, and they are playing better as a team. They're playing much better as a team, and it starts with communication. Listen. I mean, everything starts with communication, right? That's my mantra, but it really does, and especially how they work on defense, how they communicate, and how they're able to play off each other, play with each other, and really support one another. This team has that kind of cohesiveness, and that's important, because then you don't have the finger pointing and what should have happened and what didn't happen. And so it has been fun to watch. Of course, Game 3 is tonight. I will be glued to my TV if you want to follow me. let me put this here. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that is where you can find me on Twitter at Kim Y Davis. I put most of my comments post game on my Twitter feed is where I go, and then not post game, during the game, and then post game after I do interviews, I tend to post those on my IG account, and then also on my Twitter account. So I'm going to put both here. Let's see. Update crawler. Okay. Oh, look at there. So that's where you can follow me. It's also where you can follow me during the week. You know, I'm updating more in real time on Twitter, notes and articles, and you know, when I'm covering a game or sometimes in a press conference, and then post game, IG, I'll post interviews and photos, and really more interviews is what I post on IG in post game or from press conferences. So that's where you can keep up to date. You can follow me and get the insight. Charles, here's another point. Charles says coaching is vital to the way they're playing, and I haven't always been a fan of their coaching. You know what, Charles? Thank you for saying that, because I know that Mike D'Antoni has been really criticized a lot, and there are people that like, you can't win with Mike D'Antoni. And you know, I do think you have to say something about coaching, you know. And there were people, you know, like I listened to Stephen A. last week, and he was talking about after Game 6 when the Rockets lost that game. Was it Game 6 or Game 5? One of the games they lost. Maybe it was Game 6. Maybe it was Game 6. And he talked about Mike D'Antoni and his coaching, and how if he didn't win Game 7, he would be out of a job. He was going to be fired. He just knew it. And I don't know if he would have, you know, or not. And so people were criticizing him about, why didn't you put the ball in James's hands late? And so I thought that was, people were, you know, I wasn't really bothered about how he called that game late. You know, if you looked at James Harden in that game, you know, his numbers are usually good because he's going to get to the line and he can score, but he didn't look like he wanted it late. Like he was a little bit off, you know. He just, I mean, he shot okay, but it just, I got it. I got why he had Russell Westbrook with the ball and how they were supposed to swing it and what they were supposed to do. The ball was going to get to James, but I wasn't really bothered by that. I think it's easy for people to just, and it happens a lot when you're watching all the games instead of when you're zeroing in on one team all the time. You see some things a little bit differently, because when I'm watching a slate of games, I then have to go back and kind of drill down and look at stuff just a little deeper and a little differently. And I think that's what happens. And so Mike D'Antoni deserves credit on how he's been coaching this team in the playoffs. I know he's got some help on the bench with assistant coaches, but I think that they've done a good job. This coaching staff has done a good job of preparing this team and keeping them together. And I just think right now it's a pretty good, it looks to be a pretty good situation, okay, in terms of what this team is working with. So where is, there we go. I have, this platform that I use, which is called Be Live TV. People are like, oh, you use Zoom, and I use Zoom in my business. I mean, the other part of my business, I don't use it for the show, but I do like when I'm able to get the tools and widgets and what I'm able to do with Be Live, especially because I produce my show, and so myself. And so hopefully I'm going to be able to bring in somebody to help me. I'm actually, and I'll put it out here because you may know, I'm looking for a couple of interns that want to learn about, one for the production side that I could bring in, and I would have them help me with some of the production I do, and be able to also teach them some of what I know. And if they're intern, they're young, I'm sure I'll learn from what they know. And then I want another intern to come in and help me with the business development side. So if you know of anyone, email me, Kim at Kim Y Davis, or inbox me, and so that I can look for them that way. I was going through some official sources, but I run my business, especially now during COVID, I'm not going into any office. And so I work virtually a lot, and I need to work with someone who's okay with that. We can connect maybe once a week in person, but I need somebody who's good with it. So some of the services that provide interns to businesses, well, they will actually pay the interns. They want you to be in an office space where the intern can go into a place. But in this virtual age, I'm not doing that. So if you know of anybody who might be a good fit for the Kim Davis, for the KD company, that's me. Chalk Talk, let me know. Let me hear from you. And Charles says, I no longer listen to anything from Stephen A. Smith. Yeah, I like to, yeah, I get it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Before I come back to some basketball stuff, I want to jump over to the NFL because I do want to let you see this video, this clips from Deshaun Watson and the day that he got his contract, actually. And I want you to be able to hear from him. Or see him.
What's up, D-Dub?
What's up, Coach?
Man, what a privilege this is.
All about how you live between the moments.
And you are the epitome
of
everything that's good and right in this world. I love you.
Enjoy the moment.
Appreciate it. Hey, listen.
We taking pay cuts around here. I might need
Deshaun, what's up, my man?
Being able to go to these games the last couple years and sit in a stadium and see how much Houston loves you and how much you love them back. You become part of this city. To see you be able to sign this extension, man, it's pretty special.
Hey, what's up, Deshaun? And also, congratulations. It's been a long time. Who don't know, I was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago. We found out I was able to have a Make-A-Wish. I was like, of course, it has to be Deshaun.
Oh, you look good, man. You look good, man. Every day.
I know. Look at this.
What's up, stranger?
What's up?
You're just such an inspiration. So many in this community, this state, everywhere. And I've been so blessed to be a small part of your life.
I'm so proud of you, what you have become. And we know God will keep doing great things in your life. And you just live honey and be happy and accept whatever you bring your way. And just keep going. And we just want you to know we love you. There is love.
We love you. I love you.
We love you.
For McNair family, OB, Jack, to just trust in me, and believe in me. I'm their guy. I'm their quarterback. It's the biggest thing that really touches me. Growing up from where I'm from, there's not too many people to make it out. And so, for them to just trust me. That's the biggest thing.
So that was Deshaun Watson. Every time I see it, I've been on these Zooms, I've seen this video, it just tugs at my heartstring because that is sincerely who he is. And for all the things that I think are not right about this Houston Texans organization, they got that right. And so I've heard people say, even on national shows, like they didn't have any choice. They've made so many other mistakes. But what I have to say is they did right by Deshaun Watson, and hopefully they will do that throughout the entire organization. But that was great to see this young man get what he deserves. So Charles said, this was awesome. Even I watched it because of you. Like, well, I'm glad. I just think it's a good thing to show. And Deshaun Watson today has his first book coming out. He's the executive producer on a movie. He's working on a documentary. I mean, he's doing a lot of things off the field. And he said, football is first, and that's where his focus is. But he also feels like he has a message, and it's about more than football. He goes, I'm not just a football player. And so good for him for all that's happened to him to this point, and all that he will do in the future, because he will continue to make a positive impact on people's lives. You guys remember in his rookie season, his first paycheck he gave to a couple of people that worked in the cafeteria at the Houston Texans. That was after Hurricane Harvey, and some folks had lost, I guess, everything. And he presented these ladies, and it was 2 or 3 people, I don't remember. He just split the check and gave it to them. Like, and they didn't even know it. Like, they weren't asking, like, hey, can somebody help us? We work around all you millionaires. He just said, oh, wow. And so last week, I believe it was the end of last week, maybe, yeah, it must have been last week, the CNN did a show, did some stories, and they were showing people being evicted because of COVID, like that have not been able to pay their rent, find jobs, just make it, right? Because, there's some people who say the economy is good. I don't really know what they're looking at other than the stock market, which most people don't live their lives based on the stock market. They live their lives based on, can I pay my bills? Am I able to feed my family? And so they were going around showing people who were being evicted, and they did that clip in Houston, and Deshaun saw somebody on there, and he said, "Man, can you get me in touch with them?" And so that's who he is. That is the kind of heart he has. And so I just, and Deshaun's a guy here that we know because we see it, but there are guys like that throughout the league, and they should be commended. So I wanted to spend some time on that. A couple other clips I want to show you before we get out. I mentioned I had some time with Bill O'Brien. So yesterday we got a chance to talk with OB. One of the guys from the Kansas City media asked him, said, Coach, earlier in this offseason, you talked about how you would take a knee with your players. And so what is the plan? What's the plan for the team on opening night, which is in a couple of days? And this was yesterday. So I want to let you hear from Bill O'Brien.
We've had a lot of discussions as a team, as I know the Chiefs said. I believe that players from both teams have spoken to each other about what may or may not take place on Thursday night. I think you have two really good teams with obviously Andy, great football coach, and their team, a lot of great veterans. We have a lot of great veterans on our team. When I was asked earlier in the spring, I was asked if my players asked me to take a knee, would I take a knee in support of them? And I said I would. We haven't really gone down that road. But I've been very vocal as to my support of Black Lives Matter, of our players and their social justice platforms. I think that what's going on in this country right now has to be fixed. And it's been hundreds of years, but I feel like this is a time where things can really change. But relative to taking a knee or not taking a knee, not sure really that's what it's all about. I think that both teams will come to an agreement here probably over the next couple of days as to what will take place, and we'll go from there.
So obviously they will come to it the next couple of days. Game day is Thursday. This was on yesterday. That's Bill O'Brien. And then I also want to let you hear from JJ. And JJ was asked, he's from Wisconsin. And of course, this latest, I can't say the latest really outbreak has been about what's happening in Wisconsin. But you know, if I sound like I'm stuck saying it, it's because it's happening everywhere, which is so unfortunate. But here's J.J. Watt yesterday.
Those conversations are ongoing, certainly. We've had some great conversations over the last couple of weeks. I mean, surrounding the video, the actual goals that are being put forth. And there will definitely be conversations in the game, whether it's within our team alone or with the Chiefs, however it may be, to make sure that whatever everybody does, we're on the same page. Because like I said, sports has been so beneficial in that aspect of there's so many different people from so many different backgrounds in that locker room, and you can learn so much from each other, and you can have experiences and learn about experiences you never experienced yourself. So we're definitely going to have more conversations after game day. I'm looking forward to hearing my teammates' perspectives.
And that was J.J. Watt yesterday. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I think there are a few things that are important. The conversation has to continue, right? We can't say, okay, well, people said some good stuff and now let's move on. And here's something else. And I'm going to, I've talked to a couple college coaches, and, you know, now that they're practicing, you know, we're going to talk about some college stuff next week. What I'm probably going to start doing, and I'll let you all know, is in addition to Chalk Talk, I'm probably going to do a couple things during the week, and maybe I'll do just some short, you know, 5-10 minute IG interviews live. But pay attention to what's happening in college football. So, you know, while you heard, you know, Coach OB say that, and we saw last week in Alabama, Nick Saban, you know, marching down the streets of Tuscaloosa with his team in support of in support of their stance about protesting social injustice and supporting Black Lives Matter. A lot of these alums, these donors, they're not really feeling that. Like, they're not happy about these players, you know, being people, because to me, that's what they're being. You know, they're good with you when you're entertaining them and you're running and jumping and singing and performing and doing all those things. But now when we're talking about really who you are on the inside as a person, they are not feeling it. There are a lot of fans. Not everybody's in support of it. They just want, y'all just play, stop doing all that. I am just curious. I'm following that, right? You know, kind of how in some things I follow the money. So I'm following these storylines, because if that behavior grows, it's going to be a problem. Because the minute players start saying, we've seen it happen a little bit, nah, I'm going to go to a HBCU. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to pick up my mat, pick up my ball, pick up my, you know what I'm saying, and go to an HBCU, someplace where I have a different kind of connection, and I don't have to deal with that. If that happens, now you're talking about delving into their money, right? Because they can't have the level of success without these Black players. Let's just be clear about it, okay? Thank you, Charles. I appreciate your support. I do. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you always being here. And absolutely, pay college players, because if you never thought before, yeah, they're amateurs, but pay those men and women, especially as we talk about football, but because that's what we're talking about right now. Pay them. You're putting all this pressure on them. You know, look at what's happening with the Big Ten. You know, it's just going to be interesting. So we're going to be following that. You know, I will. And I really encourage you to pay attention, because that story is going to be very, very telling. But I'm going to be doing some college stuff coming up, and I got some really cool interviews coming up over the next few weeks. So, hey, as always, thank you guys for being a part of Chalk Talk. I appreciate you. Make sure that you share the video. Let me say this here. Share. So please share the video if you will. I appreciate you. I'm thanking you in advance as we continue to grow this tribe and you know, and have a place that we can share and offer a different perspective. You know, we speak truth to power here, and sometimes we have conversations that are not as welcome on other platforms, and we're okay with that. okay? And because we want to make sure that we're giving voice to things that need to be given a voice, issues, topics, and people. So also, make sure you are counted in the census. I'm going to end the show with this. Be counted in the census. Make sure that you're registered to vote. If you're in a state that is mailing out ballots, if early voting it started in North Carolina, those of you who listen from that part of the country, from that state, vote, get it done early. Get your vote done early and be counted, right? And here's what I say, I never tell you who to vote for. I share a lot of thoughts about what I think is happening politically based on facts and information. But if you're okay with the way the country is being run, then you know how to vote. If you are not, then you know how to vote. It is a binary choice on the presidential level. There are two choices. And so you make the choice that is best for you, but be counted. Don't be on the sideline. So Charles says, what is it? I raised paying players when I played. They immediately wanted me to shut up. Oh, of course they did. They don't want you to have those conversations. When we talk about things that dips into their stuff, they don't want to hear it. And thank you. Wait, let me go here. I'm going to end with that. Thank you, Charles. Chalk Talk loves you too. Hey, I love you guys. Have a great week. Remember, wear your mask, practice social distancing, and make sure you wash your hands and keep them sanitized. Have a great week, everybody. Do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. Census, be counted, vote, register. I'll see you next week.